Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to this Rackspace Academy webinar on running Hadoop on the hybrid cloud. This is a joint webinar with Rackspace and Hortonworks. My name is Gary Pryor. I'm with the Rackspace Academy team here in the UK, and I'm joined on the call today by a colleague from Rackspace in the US, Sean Anderson, and also Chris Harris from Hortonworks. So I'll get Chris and Sean to introduce themselves in just a little moment. Just a couple of logistical points before we get into the webinar proper. So this webinar is being recorded this afternoon. So should you wish to go back and watch the replay, it will be available shortly afterwards on the Rackspace Academy YouTube channel. Apologies for the beeps that you might hear on the audio as the call gets underway. That's just other people dialing into the audio, so unfortunately there's nothing really we can do about that. Other points, you'll be on mute during the course of this webinar. If you do have any questions that you wish to ask or any comments, please use the chat window that you should see on your screen. We will have a Q&A section towards the end of the webinar, but also if there are questions that come up that are particularly specific to a certain point that we're at during the webinar, then we will address them at that point in time. One other point just on the audio, we do recommend dialing in over the phone if possible. We just do tend to find that the audio quality is slightly better than the VoIP through your computer. So if that's possible, please do dial in over the phone using the telephone numbers in the confirmation email that you should have received. So that's about it for the housekeeping points. So I will ask Chris and Sean to just introduce themselves quickly. So Chris, why don't you kick off and just introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for joining this webinar this afternoon. So my name is Chris Harris. I'm the Technical Director for Hortonworks here in EMEA.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. And Sean, if you're there, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Gary. This is Sean Anderson, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager for Rackspace Hosting, specifically focused on our big data initiatives as well as our data services portfolio.
Great, thanks, Sean. So I will quickly just run through the agenda for this afternoon. So first off, Chris is going to talk a little bit about what is Hadoop and who are Hortonworks and what's Hortonworks' involvement with Hadoop. Hadoop is very good for certain data challenges that the customers or companies are facing right now. So Chris is going to highlight some of those particular challenges and the kind of Hadoop apps that people are starting to build to actually address those challenges. And I think Chris is also going to touch upon the kind of skills that you would need to get up and running with Hadoop. Sean is then going to run through options for running Hadoop at Rackspace, so whether that's on the Rackspace cloud platform or on the managed hosting big data platform. So a couple of options there, and it's important you understand the pros and cons of each. And Sean's also going to touch upon how Rackspace and Hortonworks are working together to provide Fanatical support around Hadoop on the cloud. And then I think if the technology holds, we're also going to have a quick demo of the Rackspace Cloud Big Data Platform. So that's who we are and the agenda for this afternoon. So I think at this stage, Chris, why don't I hand over to you to take us through what Hadoop is.
Thank you, Gary. So why don't we kick off? And before we go into what is Hadoop, I wanted to give you a little bit of an understanding of where we're coming from, being Hortonworks. So what we're doing really is our focus is really to help Apache Hadoop really become a key part for your modern data architecture. So this is really allowing you to sit Hadoop as a part of your existing architecture and really integrate into what you have. This is what we call the modern data architecture. So as an organization, being really the core engineering team behind Apache Hadoop. What we focus on is really helping drive that innovation inside the open source community. So when you get to hear and get to play with Apache Hadoop and the Hortonworks data platform, there is a completely open source platform that is really engineered by the team here at Hortonworks. What we do is we focus on really taking that technology forward and being able to do many of the use cases in which I'm going to describe during this webinar. But we also understand that as an enterprise that you want to be able to take advantage of that open source innovation, but in a way in which it is tested and stable and certified to run inside people's production environments. This is why we put together something called the Hortonworks Data Platform. There really is a tested and certified version of Apache Hadoop that has been tested at scale at many organizations, including Yahoo, who have one of the biggest Hadoop clusters. And then we package that up and then integrate it into many of our partners, as well as provide it as an open source distribution to the market. One of the people who obviously host this Hortonworks Data Platform is Rackspace, and you're able to provide you a tested and certified Hadoop distribution that runs on the Rackspace cloud. And then obviously as a reseller, Rackspace are able to provide you support backed by Hortonworks, who are the key engineers behind Apache Hadoop. So that's what we do as an organization. We're about 300 people right now and growing extremely quickly. So moving on to the reason why people are looking at Hadoop in general and what the real drivers are around big data. So if you look at how people have built traditional systems, you obviously have an application layer at the top, be that your BI tools or custom applications in which are really getting data out of relational databases or enterprise data warehouses. This is traditionally a lot of data about maybe transactions, about what people have purchased, such as in the next 1 to 2 months, this is our revenue. These are the types of products that people are buying. This is who's buying our products. However, what people are really trying to understand is how people are really interacting with them, and when they've purchased products, how are they behaving, and how do people really feel about their brand as they move forward, and what's driving them to purchase. This is really getting many organizations to look and focus on really what is called the emerging data sources. This is things like sentiment analysis, clickstream analysis, geodata, and lots of unstructured data. If you think about your own personal behavior, you'll probably click on a lot more things, or your telephone or your sensors are broadcasting a lot more information than I purchase products. So we see a lot of this data growing. You can see some of the numbers here in terms of just in 2012, there was 2.8 zettabytes of data. And lots of this data is in different formats. It doesn't really fit very well into rows and columns. So that lots of enterprises are under this sort of pressure of what do we do with these new emerging data sources. So how Hadoop really fits in is really to enrich what you already have in terms of an emerging modern data architecture. So what happens is for many enterprises out there, they're using Hadoop as a landing zone to be able to land all this data. It is a platform that provides both a compute and a storage behavior so that you can land this data, be that in structured or semi-structured, even unstructured data in a low-cost manner, and then being able to interrogate what's interesting, explore that data directly on Hadoop, and then when you found the interesting components, you could then push it to other parts of your data architecture. So then you could push data into the data warehouse or the relational databases. So really use Hadoop as an environment that basically allows you to land large volumes of data and start looking at use cases that you potentially have not been able to do before. So when people get started with Hadoop, what they do is they typically will start off in some of the what's known as new data types. So this is looking at things like sentiment analysis or clickstream analysis, sensor data, really trying to understand how people are behaving with them. Now, the interesting thing about the 6 data sources that I've listed in this particular slide is that these aren't really the sorts of data you would traditionally store within inside a relational database or within inside a enterprise data warehouse. Because of the real structure that these data kind of maintain, sensor data, for example, doesn't fit that well into rows and columns. So if you can store this data, as I mentioned, and then interrogate it with your existing tool suite, and then being able to push that into your common data, your existing data warehousing or your relational databases once you've restructured it. But also being a platform where you can store large volumes of data, what a lot of people are doing is also storing their structured data on Hadoop, and for mostly historical reasons. So let's imagine that I want to keep 3 to 6 months worth of data in my enterprise data warehouse or inside my relational database. However, when I want to keep maybe 5 years worth of customer data, it's not cost effective for me to do that with inside a traditional data source. So what I'll do is I'll move that data source, that historical data source, into Hadoop, and then when requested, I will move parts of that historical data back into the relational database or interrogate it directly on Hadoop itself. So this is how a lot of people get started. So in taking Twitter streams and something like that was a great use case for people who have never used Hadoop before. So if you start thinking of if I can start by building a new application, be that any of the data types that I described in the previous slide, I start thinking about my architecture as the next stage. What does my modern data architecture really look like? And how do I move that forward? Not only from a key services perspective, but also from skills and integration. So let's look at that particular topics in a bit more detail. So if you start looking at the key services that are part of the Hortonworks data platform and Apache Hadoop, what you really start seeing is there are things in which I clearly need to be able to do. So I need to be able to store data. So there's a storage element, and this is a distributed file system known as HDFS that is able to store your data across large volumes of machines. And then I want to be able to process that data. So unlike in traditional systems where I move the data for processing, in Hadoop I'm going to process the data where the data lives. So this is really where things like MapReduce and Tears and Storm and other processing engines really sit inside Hadoop to allow you to do different types of workload on the data that you've stored within inside the platform. So once I've got this data stored, and obviously I can process it, be that in batch or in real time or in interactive fashion, what I need to access that data as well, right? So how do I actually go about integrating my BI tools, or how do I do ETL transformations, or how do I maybe even do a NoSQL store on top of the data that's living inside my Hadoop cluster? This is where data access becomes key, and there's projects associated with Hadoop and included within inside the Hortonworks data platform that can be provided by Rackspace, such as Hive and Pig, and that really allow you to Hive, for example, interact with that data over SQL. Rather than you having to write lots of Java and MapReduce code, you can simply write SQL statements to be able to access that data. And then there's the question of how do I get data into the platform. So this could be the fact that I may want to be able to pull data from a relational database, be that Oracle, MySQL, or maybe a data warehouse like Teradata or SAP HANA or whatever enterprise data warehouse that you want to be able to do. And this is through a project called Scoop, which is part of the Hortonworks data platform. You may even want to go as simple as, well, rather than connect to a database, I want to stream in a file with Flume, or I want to be able to simply just define an NFS mount point to be able to drop data into my platform. And these are the sorts of services that are provided as part of the data movement elements of the platform. And then there's the kind of green box that's highlighted in this particular diagram, which is, it's great that I can store large volumes of data. I can process it in any different shape and format that it's at. I can access it via SQL and other processing engines, other access mechanisms. But how do I manage, monitor, and provision this cluster, right? So there's operational services as well associated with the platform that allow you to basically say, I've got a set of machines, be that 10, 100, 1,000, or 4,000 machines, in which are part of my Hadoop cluster, and then have an ability to provision, manage, and monitor these services. That's really what the key box up here in green is referring to, is the open source components such as Apache and Bari that allow you to fulfill them requirements, again, in a completely open source manner and included within inside the platform. So it really is being able to provide you a complete data platform that include the core services, the data services, as well as the operational services that allow you to have that landing zone and move data around your new modern data architecture. So then it comes, the next question is, well, what skills do I need to do this? So there's really three major buckets of skills in which people need to think about. So how do I operate my cluster? How do I analyze the data that's on my cluster? How do I really do the development things such as transforming the data? My strategy as Hortonworks is to really focus on the ability for you to reuse the skills you already have, all right? And make it as simple as possible as a technology for you to integrate into your existing architecture. So if you see here, I've just highlighted some of the technologies that really make it happen. So from a development perspective, I'll just start at the top. It's really about using your existing ETL tools, such as Informatica, Talend, or even your kind of coding school, your lower level coding skills if you want to do so, such as Java and .NET. And then from a data analysis perspective, you should be able to, and you can today, use your existing BI tool suite. So you can integrate Hadoop directly with Excel, for example, or Tableau, or Business Objects, or a number of the BI tools that are out there. And what we're going to focus on in this particular webinar is how do you operate it, and how do you start small and being able to scale as you grow, because you want to be able to start leveraging Hadoop for some of the new applications that I've described, and then as you grow, being able to elastically add more components. And this is one of the key things that Rackspace provide you, is the ability to run Hadoop, but leveraging the same skills that you already have in terms of operating and managing the Hadoop environment. So that's key to us as an organization. And then the last, just going on the skill set, for example, one of the things in which, before we go into the operating element in a lot of detail, one of the things in which a lot of people say to me is, well, how do I access my data through SQL? So there's the de facto way of accessing data through Hadoop via SQL is from a project called Apache Hive, which is, again, included inside the Hortonworks data platform and provided to you by Rackspace, that really allow you to use SQL to obviously interact with your data. So I can send it a SQL query, and it'll come back to me with the appropriate data set within a few seconds. But also being able to get that speed when the data is at scale. So this isn't just about being able to query small data sets where you might start out at, but also as you add more data, you want to be able to use the same SQL interface to query against terabytes or petabytes of data as that comes in. And you want that SQL interface to be extremely broad in terms of the SQL semantics. And this is important because obviously it helps you leverage your existing SQL skills, as well as being able to integrate into the tools you already use, such as Excel and Tableau and many of the other BI tools. So you can start taking advantage of them particular frameworks. So this is what Apache Hive really brings you, and it's the standard way in which people are addressing the ability to use SQL against the data stored in Hadoop. So just before I hand it back to Rackspace to really talk in depth about how you operate and manage the Hortonworks data platform within inside the Rackspace environment, I wanted to just sum up what the architecture looks like for many organizations in terms of a modern data architecture. So these are many of the things in which I've discussed briefly during this early session of the webinar, where you can see data landing within inside the Hortonworks data platform, be that running in the cloud, on OpenStack, we're part of the OpenStack initiative, or maybe directly on Linux, or even on Windows, should you wish to run the platform on that particular operating system. So we support a variety of different operating systems. You land data in there, you integrate it into your enterprise data warehouse, your relational databases, so you can move the appropriate data to the right place within your architecture, and then you can use your existing tool suite in terms of BI and analytics to interrogate that data. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Rackspace to really talk about how you can run Hadoop within inside the Rackspace environment as a cloud platform, and how easy it is to really get started in terms of the Hortonworks data platform. So with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris, and really appreciated that introduction to Hortonworks and all their capabilities. And so I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into kind of Rackspace's role in the various scenarios that Chris described. And one of the things that he spent a good deal of time on is this idea of a modern data architecture. And this is something that when we first started working with Hortonworks, that we were both very big believers in. And one of the things that we say is that Hadoop doesn't necessarily exist in silos, meaning we don't see a lot of customers ripping and replacing for a Hadoop-only solution. We still see them integrating with SQL, relational databases, with data warehouses, with other forms, other data forms, and other data repositories that really kind of tie in all the kind of disparate data sources inside their organization. And so here at Rackspace, what we really try to do is for our customers and for our prospective customers to facilitate the type of data processing that they're going to be needing at any given time. And so that's why we like to say, and as it states on this slide, that we don't have one big data solution, and we don't believe that one size fits all. But we do aim to try to leverage existing technologies as well as new data platforms to really put together a portfolio of products that are tools to kind of get that job done. So what I'd like to do is just kind of jump into our data services portfolio, and this kind of speaks to the modern data architecture that we see a lot of customers really aiming to build and integrate with one another. So you can see here, we have a nice portfolio of data services that ranges from newer distributed data technologies like Hadoop to NoSQL technologies like MongoDB and the Object Rocket platform. But if you just start here on the left-hand column is definitely not going to be any surprise to anybody that understands or knows Rackspace. We've been fanatically supporting MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle for the greater part of about 10 years now, and we have entire teams of on-staff DBA to give expertise around the best way to not only run SQL and MySQL and Oracle workloads, but also how to optimize on top of it. Really get into kind of optimizing and tuning the application layer to help our customers run SQL and MySQL more successfully. Newer additions to this data services portfolio just in the last year are obviously our partnership with Hortonworks that we're going to talk a great deal about today in the coming presentation. We've also acquired a company called Object Rocket that provides a MongoDB service that is fully managed through Rackspace. And here very recently, within the next quarter, we will be providing the Redis to Go technology, which is an in-memory data technology through our cloud databases platform. And so there's a lot of ways that when we first started looking at the space and we first started thinking about how we can facilitate customers with these data workloads, we really had to understand where Rackspace fits, because one of the things that Chris described is this modern data architecture and many layers, everything from ETL to analytics. And so we really like to think of ourselves as kind of this middle area here when we talk about best-in-breed data services. We obviously have the underlying storage capabilities, including just dedicated commodity-type servers, DAS, SAN, and NAS. And then on top of that, we hope to layer on, and essentially what we're doing for our customers is layering on a very performant, highly optimized engine to perform some of these workloads. And when you get up a little bit further the stack to kind of more of the business intelligence or visualization or dashboarding capabilities, or what we might kind of lump sum as analytics, that's where we still just really aim to partner with some of the 4 leading services out there. So if it's Pentaho or Tableau, pretty much a majority of the people inside of the Hortonworks analytics ecosystem are able to tie into our technologies here. And one of the reasons that they're able to do that so easily is that we've stuck very close to the core Apache trunk that Hortonworks talks about really enriching as part of their strategy moving forward. And we see that by Hortonworks sticking very close to the Apache trunk, it also allows us to innovate faster, because we have the entire propulsion of the open source community to help both integrate these products, integrate different types of data sources through different types of connectors, as well as integrating with some of the foremost and some of the newest forms of dashboarding and BI applications. And so this analytics as a service is really where we see a lot of people deriving that kind of instant ROI, or that return on investment for the type of higher level activities that they're using, that they would like Hadoop to perform. So really, we don't want to offer an end-to-end solution, analytics as a service. We really want to be, a provider that offers the best engine and the most optimized engine to perform that service. So that kind of leads us to our 2 productized offerings. Our Cloud Big Data Platform is currently in limited availability, where our Rackspace Managed Big Data Platform is in full GA right now. And when you really look at these 2 productized offerings, they're really the same offering, and the way that we like to think about them is 2 separate deployment capabilities. The Rackspace Cloud Big Data Platform is of course served instantly and as a utility through our Rackspace Public Cloud, which is powered by OpenStack. And our Rackspace Managed Big Data Platform is really your ability to leverage the entire server portfolio from Rackspace, as well as any of our network devices, security devices, load balancers, other application services that exist here at Rackspace, to really design a custom and also highly optimized infrastructure layout for Hadoop. Having 2 deployment capabilities really helps us solve a majority of customer concerns when we hear about what are the concerns around data integrity, or where our data actually lives. We see a lot of newer workloads with, say, social data in there, or just kind of non-PII data, really focused on the cloud, because the ability to instantly provision, to kind of scale as you need to meet the demands of that data becomes increasingly important. There's still, however, a large subset of customers that, for whatever reason, maybe for a performance reason, need to kind of leverage the resources of a bare metal environment. Or maybe they have compliance concerns that prevent them from hosting either PII or financial data inside the public cloud. And so for those customers, we really want to facilitate them with a dedicated option that helps them not only fulfill their requirements when it comes to deploying Hadoop, but also fulfill their requirements to their customers on that type of data integrity or data control. And so why does it matter? Why would we put out different deployment models? We see a very calculated way in working with Hortonworks on how our customers are both exploring and validating and deploying Hadoop. And so we see a pretty calculated behavior. A lot of times it starts with an interaction with a sandbox product. Hortonworks has a great sandbox that can be downloaded directly from their website. It's a great way on a local machine to start kicking around with some data, understand, can I write pig scripts, can I write Hive queries, and really get a feel for the underlying application, right? But in this scenario, we're only going to be able to deal with a pretty small set of data, whatever can exist on a local machine. And usually, once we validated that, those exercises, we validated that we can kind of perform some of these, higher value activities on the data, then we usually see customers want to actually do that with a larger subset of data. So now we're using the same types of activities, the same types of kind of validation towards the technologies, but we need to move that into a more highly scalable platform. And this is where we really see cloud big data is kind of accelerating the adoption of both Hadoop and other technologies out there, because we're giving people a very, a very easily mitigated way to explore Apache Hadoop. They can spin up a cluster for a period of hours. They can do that testing on it, and they can kill the cluster without any need to really think about, what the production implications of that are. And from there, we may see, a couple different paths come from there. That person may decide to exist on the cloud forever. We've definitely seen this with customers that have very, ephemeral workloads where they're running these queries and they're from time to time in their batch process. So they may choose to do something like load information into cloud files, use some of that information from cloud files, do some processing, and then kill that. Then about the other 50% of our users we see with more persistent workloads where they're constantly building a data lake or a repository of data that they're making queries on as that data subset grows. So since we see about equal types of workloads here, we really wanted to give both those options. Now, for people that are doing persistent workloads that may have some additional security concerns or may, want to derive some specific type of performance, whether they're trying to do batch processing or more interactive or streaming type of processing, they may actually want to go a little bit more granular and dictate the resources that the specific nodes have. And that's where we really see the Managed Big Data Platform coming into play, which allows you to kind of turn up the knob on each one of those variables to make sure that you have the most optimized infrastructure for your workload. So real quickly, we kind of went over this. The Managed Big Data Platform allows you to leverage the entire server portfolio here at Rackspace, really focused on using the best practices from both Hortonworks and Rackspace as infrastructure and application to get down to a level to where we're providing the best recommendations for hosting Hadoop in any type of cloud environment, whether that's a dedicated cloud or a public cloud environment. And then the Cloud Big Data Platform, which is essentially our way to deliver a very common industry-leading distribution. It is common vanilla HDP. We've not added any proprietary or any special bits on top of that, except for our ability to deploy that through the OpenStack platform. So you're interfacing from day one with a common distribution of Hadoop, and we feel that that's going to help our customers not really have to go back to the drawing board when they have to retool this either for a dedicated environment or to even move to another provider. We believe that open matters in this industry, and that by giving the customers a choice of where to host their application on a common application platform, we believe that Fanatical support will indefinitely make the difference and understand which partner to host Hadoop with. Very simple costing structure. If you go to our website right now, we only have 2 flavor classes, and what I'm going to do after this next slide is I'm actually going to jump into our cloud control panel and show you guys the deployment and how quickly you can deploy a 3-node Hadoop cluster. And so really quickly, there are some caveats at this current time. Like I stated, the Cloud Big Data Platform is currently in limited availability, so look for some additional cadence points here in the next 2 months. We'll be rolling out additional functionality. So if you're just looking for Hortonworks Data Platform version 1.1, 1.3, that is available in both Cloud Big Data Platform and Managed Big Data Platform today. I'm actually happy to announce that we've rolled over to HDP 2.0, which includes things like Yarn, as well as HDFS 2.0, into the Managed Big Data Platform. So that is available today and fully supported by Rackspace and Hortonworks. The Cloud Big Data Platform, we are looking to roll into 2.0 roughly in about a month's time here. So during the second quarter of this year, we will be rolling out the 2.0 framework. Kind of some of the core components that Chris talked about, just the standard MapReduce functionality, HDFS, PIG, and Hive. These are available in both platforms. In Cloud Big Data Platform, we do not include support for HBase, Flume, Scoop, Ambari, Oozie, and HCatalog. Now let me preface that by saying that these applications are in the product, meaning they can be activated. They're just not fully supported by Rackspace at this time. Of course, in Managed Big Data Platform, we support the entire stack of tooling around that. In limited availability, we are currently limiting customers to about 111 terabytes of usable HDFS data. And that's after the 3x replication. Obviously, with big data workloads and in a limited capacity, there's a large propensity for one very large user to come into a cloud infrastructure and spin up 100 nodes, therefore limiting the interaction of the other current customers that we have. We look to move into more of a GA capacity here in Q2 as well. At that time, we will lift those limitations for access. If I would like to use a RESTful API based off the OpenStack framework, that is obviously only available in Cloud Big Data Platform. You can, in Managed Big Data Platform, however, use the Ambari APIs that come with the standard HTTP distribution. Both of them are fully managed and supported. We share responsibilities with Hortonworks to make sure that we are meeting a common SLA and a common commitment back to the customer. And that actually works really well because Rackspace being essentially key in supporting infrastructure, and Hortonworks being key in associating, the actual Hadoop application piece with that. If I wanted to stand up a network piece in front of the platform, I'm obviously only able to do that in Managed Big Data Platform. It is a little bit better tailored for persistent workloads when we talk about ROI and just kind of the scaling of the data. If I wanted to just tear up and tear down a Hadoop environment, I would probably look at Cloud Big Data Platform, as Managed Big Data Platform does require some sort of contract commitment there. And obviously, the Cloud Big Data Platform is priced per minute for utility pricing. You will notice that we only support at this time the Hortonworks data platform, and we have no current plans to partner with any other distribution provider. We've seen a lot of similarities and a lot of synchronicity between the two companies, really existing on our commitment to the open source nature of Hadoop. We believe that by staying close to the trunk and by being vehemently committed to the open source technology, that Hortonworks is going to be the best position to not only inhibit the roadmap moving forward, to kind of see the types of enhancements and features that our customers want to see, but they'll also be able to do that quickly because they'll be able to leverage the entire IP of the open source community. And the real last one is, and we're going to talk a little bit about this as I fire up the demo here, but is Cloud Files integration. So we have a Swift-based object storage cloud platform, very similar to, say, a Cloud Drive or an S3 type of platform, where you can just port data. It's a very inexpensive way to host data in the cloud. You have the ability through Cloud Big Data Platform to actually either process stuff that lives natively on Cloud Files, or suck that into HDFS and do the processing into the HDFS cluster. So why is that important? Well, we actually have a lot of customers that have non-persistent workloads, and they want to be able to house the data that they want to perform the analysis on indefinitely, because ingestion takes time. It takes time to ship data to a provider, specifically a cloud provider, and they want to be able to essentially ad hoc query that whenever it makes sense. So this allows data to live inside of Cloud Files, to be processed whenever it's prudent to be processed, and then even the actual outcomes of that processing can be displayed directly back into Cloud Files. So we really feel this is integrating a whole net new type of workload where customers will actually seek to build up Hadoop infrastructure only when they need to perform those types of activities. So I'm gonna switch to a small demo here, and my apologies if it stops working. But you guys should be able to see, this is the Rackspace Cloud Control Panel, and I have access to all of the Rackspace Cloud services here, including Cloud Servers, Load Balancers, Cloud Files, as you can see it here. And then if you actually look in the More tab, if it's activated, you will see our Big Data portfolio over here as well. So let's go over to Big Data. And you see that I have nothing here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a small cluster here. We're going to call it demo. And we're going to house it in our DFW data center. We also have the ability to provision in our Chicago data center, which is labeled ORD there. For anybody in the UK, we are fully set up for deployment in the UK as well. So if this is activated in your UK cloud account, you will have an additional provisioning target, which will be labeled LUN for our London data center. I'm going to provision 1.3. And I am actually going to do the smaller of the flavor instances. So here are two types of data nodes that we have available to you. We have a 1.4 terabyte version and 11 terabyte version. And just depending on how I need to scale my data nodes to fit the capacity of data I'm looking to query, I may use either one of these flavors. So a good example is if I need 110 terabytes, it's not going to be very cost effective for me to provision a bunch of 1.4 terabyte nodes. So obviously 11 terabytes would be my focal point there. If I'm doing 5 terabytes, 10 terabytes, it's obviously going to be better to provision a larger number of 1.4 terabyte disks. Now there's some implications that come with that, performance based on the number of nodes that you have. So we just ask that you contact somebody from Rackspace and tangentially Hortonworks to understand how to best architect this environment. So I'm just going to do a small cluster here. I'm going to do 3 nodes because whenever we're talking about data nodes, one of the things to keep in mind is that when we're replicating data 3 times, if I don't have 3 data nodes, I could obviously just provision 1. If I wanted here, there's nothing preventing me from doing that. But if I only have 1 data node, then that means all 3 replicas live on the same data node. So that has some performance implications, and obviously for the kind of continuity of the infrastructure, it's going to help if those replicas actually live on a separate data node. So this is going to give me access to a lot of my controls as far as accessing the data platform once it's available. And as you'll see down here, I have the ability to actually provision connection to a container inside Cloud Files if I wanted to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click here and start creating the cluster. It's building in DFW. And here you see what we're actually doing here, and you'll see another node pop up here shortly, is one of the things that we've done with Cloud Big Data and through the OpenStack framework is we don't want our customers having to think about how to configure master services in Hadoop with the data nodes. Instead, the master services are actually pretty calculated. We can automate all of that provision for you. So instead, if you're a Cloud Big Data Platform user, you are solely focused on the data node portion of that. And we actually provision a name node and gateway node for you. So obviously the name node is going to help with orchestration of any tasks, also understanding where the data actually lives on the specific nodes. And the gateway node is basically your access to all the other services. So Hive, HBase, all the other things that are included in Cloud Big Data Platform can be accessed through the gateway node. Obviously, once this is in GA, I can have hundreds of data nodes if I need to. It's going to provision here in roughly a matter of a couple minutes. And then I can have use to that full Hadoop environment right away. So Gary, one of the things we might do, this is going to take 1 or 2 minutes, so I don't know if it's a good time to answer a couple questions, and then we can flip back here once these services come back online.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Sean. So folks, just as Sean's mentioned, the Cloud Big Data Platform is currently in what we call limited availability. So if you are keen to have access to this through your cloud account, if you head to the rackspace.co.uk website, there's a very short form that you just need to go and complete, and we can get that access to the products added to your account very quickly. So I've actually posted the full link in the chat window, so hopefully you can see that. There's also a whole load of more information up there. But yeah, so as we said, if anyone has any questions or comments, if you've had experience of Hadoop before and there's maybe something that you got a bit confused with, now's the chance to get questions through. Just to get people in the mood, I've got a couple myself. And I think maybe this is one for Chris. Chris, when people first start using Hadoop, are there any particular areas that you tend to find they need support with? Are there any common bits and pieces that people fall down on?
How people normally start off with their uses of Hadoop, and the Hortonworks data platform, is that they'll be looking at a use case just to help them get started, such as sentiment analysis, where they will take data out of Twitter, for example, because it's a public available data set, and it's something that you typically haven't looked at in detail before. So being able to get data into that. One of the challenges that some people obviously face is the ability to find an environment to really do a POC or pilot. Or the ability for people to turn to Rackspace and really stand up a cloud in the simple steps as we've seen here will really help people, and I really encourage people to do this as part of a POC or pilot. To really help them get started. This will accelerate a lot of the projects in which I'm actively working with today.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Sean, same question for you. Are there any areas that, I guess maybe from an infrastructure perspective, we see people struggling with when they first start to look at Hadoop or maybe other big data propositions?
Absolutely, and so I think we've seen a lot of kind of these barriers to adoption. When we talk to customers on calls, Hadoop being a newer technology, there's a very limited subset of intellectual property on how to construct and to architect Hadoop successfully. And luckily enough, Hortonworks has been kind of one of the pioneers in really understanding how to architect Hadoop. So we really feel by providing Cloud Big Data Platform, it is the ability to validate these types of use cases. So whether I'm trying to do machine learning or sentiment analysis, there's obviously a hesitation because this is a platform that's slightly new. It's not part of the core kind of mainframe infrastructure of an organization. And so a lot of times it's very hard to get these projects through a procurement cycle or past finance because they're not part of the core, running infrastructure that, a majority of our customers spend about 60% of their time on. So we hope that this platform allows customers to kind of flesh out those use cases in a way that kind of goes beyond a proof of concept. We call that next level discovery like a proof of value to understand, are these exercises that I'm doing, is this machine learning or is this recommendation engine that I'm trying to build, is this going to actually bring benefit to my organization in a way that's going to produce revenue or that's going to provide optimizations inside my business that are really going to help out? Once we see those kind of points of values really fleshed out, it's really a no-brainer to kind of move to that next step, which is kind of production or more production-type workloads.
Great, thanks, Sean. We'll still know the questions come in, so folks, this might be your last few minutes to get any questions answered if you do have any. But I guess one more for me just to keep things going. And Sean, you've talked about proof of concepts and proof of value. Are there any industries or kind of market sectors that we see leading the way in adopting these new technologies?
We do. I think retail's an easy one, and it's the one that we talk about a lot because we can often see the benefits of e-tailers deploying Hadoop fairly quickly. So let's take a recommendation like a provider like an e-commerce site. If I'm able to build a recommendation engine that actually improves the take rate of other products inside my cart, so say a customer's browsing my site, they buy a T-shirt, and automatically, or within a matter of minutes or seconds, Hadoop's able to provide a recommendation of something else in our catalog that user might like. If that user actually buys into that and takes that other T-shirt, then that's a pretty instant ROI. So we see these very instant return on investments when we see people in the e-commerce industry deploying Hadoop. That makes it a very focal and easy place to do it. Also, the mere competition for these e-commerce sites really puts the onus on the company to make sure that they're doing everything and they're leveraging the best technology to make sure they're competitive in the industry. I'd say from there, healthcare and financial services are sectors that are increasingly trying to understand how they optimize business. And Hadoop is a specific tool that these companies are using to kind of find out and to kind of validate these optimizations that they want to put forward.
Great, thanks, Sean. So still no other questions come in. So Sean, how are things looking back on the demo? I can still see lots of amber on that screen. Are we being let down by the technology?
Yeah, hopefully not. It's funny, I spun one up right before the site and it did it. It looks like we're hung on the gateway node, so hopefully it'll resolve here in 2 seconds or so. So it's very odd.
Okay. So look, I mean, last chance for any questions. So just while you guys are thinking, Sean, if I can just, I'm just going to take you off screen share for a moment, because I just want to talk about. Oh, hang on. Just before I do that, we do have a question that's come in. So it's, the question is, I may have missed it, but can the gateway node be deployed in high availability? So Sean, one for you, I think.
So yeah, no, as far as the gateway node, I'll have to check on that specifically. Now, what we are going to be doing when we release HTTP 2.0 on Cloud Big Data Platform is giving users the ability to provision a secondary name node. So one of the bigger advancements in HTTP 2.0 is the ability to effectively have a redundant name node. We know that not all customers are going to care about a redundant name node. So for some people, you know, they don't need it. They'll just re-ingest the data. They just want to have something there. So we're going to allow customers to opt in to having that HA capability on name node. As far as gateway node, I'll have to check on that. It's a very small provision services that we do there. So I will have to get back on that, and maybe there's a good way that we can disseminate that information on the backside of this.
Cool, thanks, Sean. So yeah, just wanted to highlight a few other Rackspace Academy events coming up in the very near future, and one of hopefully of particular interest if you want to follow up and get a bit more hands-on with big data and with Hadoop. So at the next Unlocked conference, which is Rackspace's twice yearly kind of annual, well, sort of semi-annual gathering. So it's 19th of May in London. We're actually running a number of workshops in the afternoon, and one of those will be on Hadoop. And Chris from Hortonworks is coming in to help us run that particular session. So if you do want an opportunity to be guided through some of the hands-on tutorials that Hortonworks have available using the Rackspace Cloud Big Data Platform, come along to that particular session in London on the 19th of May. A couple of other things just to highlight. So if you're just interested in some more general cloud training, we have a number of cloud hands-on training days running around the country. So you can see the next one in London is actually fully booked, but we'll be back in London in the near future, and we also have sessions in Belfast, Leeds, and Cardiff coming up in the very near future. We have a kind of a dedicated day for media businesses up in Manchester at Media City UK, which is taking place next week on the 1st of April. And then finally, we've started launching or started rolling out a 2-day hybrid cloud solutions architecting course. So we ran the first one of those last month here in Hayes. The next one is also in Hayes, and those sessions will be rolling out around the country very soon. For details on any of these, head to rackspace.co.uk/academy. If there's nothing that suits you right now, or no locations or dates that work for you, there's a short form where you can fill in your details, and we'll keep you up to date as we roll out new courses moving forwards. Sean, just before we wrap up, have those amber lights turned green on your control panel?
Unfortunately not. We're going to have to figure this one out, guys, but luckily I've got a Fanatical support team to help me out with this. So also another thing we talked about was Cloud Files integration. There's actually a link directly in the control panel. We have a great webinar that we did recently that we filmed, and Nerval gives a step-by-step demo of porting in from Cloud Files.
Great, thanks, Sean. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Sean and Chris, thank you very much for your time. I think that was a really great session, and hopefully folks listening got a lot out of that. And so thank you very much for joining. Just a reminder, the replay will be on the Rackspace Academy YouTube channel shortly afterwards. And other than that, thank you very much for joining, and we will catch you all next time. Cheers.
Hey,
Bye-bye
Gary,
for now.
we just got green, so.
Hey, we got there. We got there. Well done, Sean. Thanks very much, guys. We'll catch you all very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.